Hi and welcome back to the channel. So if it's your first time here, my name's Andrew and the purpose of today's video is I'm going to go through some of the settings that you should change immediately on your new DJI Mini 5 Pro, and hopefully that's going to result in better footage, smoother flights, and hopefully keep your drone safe in the case of an emergency. So we'll ask if you could do the like and subscribe thing before we get started, as I'm trying to get over the 1,000 subscribers. I'm not sponsored, so any help would be greatly appreciated. Now the DJI Mini 5 is a fantastic drone and it's got some amazing features, but it does need some of the settings tweaked straight out of the box to ensure that you do get a smoother flight, better footage, and some of the safety options in place prior to you going out and flying the drone. So hopefully by the end of the video you will have learned something and your drone will be fully optimized, ready for your first flight. So the first thing we need to do is to go into settings and look at the safety menu. Now this is done by pressing the three dots on the top right, and that'll take us into safety. So the first thing that comes up is the manual obstacle avoidance. So from this you've got three options. You've got bypass, brake and off. Now the last thing you want to do is have it in the off option unless you're trying to put it through a small gap. Because if you switch it to off, this means you're not going to get any obstacle avoidance and the drone is likely to crash. So that's going to leave you with two options of brake and bypass. And it's a tricky call on which one to decide because they both got their advantages and their disadvantages. So with bypass, it means that once the drone detects an obstacle, it's going to try and move around the obstacle to carry on flying. Now, I've seen a lot of videos where people have said just leave it in bypass and the drone will maneuver itself out of any trouble. But for me, it's a bit more nuanced than that. Now this is okay if you're in an environment where the obstacles are easily seen. So say for example you're flying through a woods and the trees are in leaf. That's great because the drone's going to be able to pick up on those and go around them quite easily. So the difficulty comes in is when you've got smaller items like twigs on a tree. So the drone could be flying along, thinks it's got plenty of space, go to move to the left or the right, up or down, whatever it is, but because the twigs are so thin, it's not going to pick them up. They're going to go into the propellers and the drone is going to crash. If you are using bypass, you've got two other options, being normal and nifty. And for me, I always tend to leave it in normal because that's the safer option. So with nifty, the drone will try and get closer to the ground or to the objects it's trying to avoid, and that runs the risk of the drone crashing and being damaged again. So as I said, tend to stick to normal. So with brake, the drone will just stop when it detects an object. And this means then that you're going to have to fly manually out of whatever it is to safety. Now this could be okay if it's just a matter of reversing the drone out or making it ascend or descend, you're going to be fine. But you could be in a situation where you can't see where the drone is and then you try and fly it out and it's going to cause even more problems. Another disadvantage of brake is that if you've got the drone following you, say for example you're on a mountain bike or you're running and the drone detects an obstacle, it's going to stop. Now you could be another 100 meters, 200 meters down the track before you realize, and then you've got to turn around and go back. So it's all dependent on your environment, which option you should use. So really you need to decide whether or not to have it on bypass or brake depending on your individual circumstances at the time. So for me, I do tend to have it on bypass for a lot of the time, but I will change it over to brake depending on my environment. So next I'm going to move on to RTH, or return to home. And this will automatically kick in if the drone loses its signal or it's running low on power, but you can also initiate it by pressing the button on the controller and that's going to bring the drone back to you. So now you've got two options with return to home, and that's going to be preset and optimal. So the first thing we need to do is to set the return to home height, and this should be at least 10 meters higher than anything else you've got in that area. So say for example you've got a building which is 20 meters tall, you should have the return to home height set to at least 30 meters. So you've always got that buffer zone between the tallest thing in the area and the height of the drone. Now with some of the older DJI drones, if you had it set to preset, what the drone would do is once return to home is initiated, the drone would automatically rise up to that maximum altitude and then fly in a straight line back to the home point and then descend. So it would just go up, across and down. Now DJI have also introduced the new optimal return to home. And this means that the drone will no longer go up to the maximum height and then travel across and then descend. It's going to find its own smart way back to the home point. But you do need to have good lighting conditions for this to work properly. So say for example you're in a similar situation where you've got trees around you and the trees are say 20 meters tall. What the drone will do, instead of going up to that maximum height of 60 or 80 meters, it may just rise up to 30 meters so it knows it's covered the trees, and then it'll use the bypass mode to find its way back to you. So it's going to be quicker and it's going to save you on battery power. But again, deciding on which option you want to use is going to be dependent on your circumstances and your location. It's not going to be the case of one setting covers everything. So just bear that in mind when you are out flying. Now the AR settings means that when the drone is returning to home, when you're looking on the controller, it's going to give you a path in green that the drone is going to take to get back to you, so you can monitor exactly where it's going and if there are any potential obstacles in its way. And if there are, you can just press the stop, take over manually and fly it back to yourself. Okay, and this is the part where I say I'm not sponsored, so if you could do the like and subscribe thing, as well as the bell notification, hopefully get me over the 1,000 subscribers, and then maybe I'll be able to go somewhere nice to film rather than spend all my money on vitamin D tablets to help compensate for the lack of sunlight, because obviously I'm based in Wales. So I'll take us on to max altitude and max distance. Now with max altitude, a lot of the places around the world are set to 120 meters or 400 feet. So you need to make sure that the drone is set to that limit so you don't fall foul of any bylaws for wherever you are. Now again, max distance depends on your environment. Most drone regulations say the drone has to remain within visual line of sight. And if you're flying on a bright sunny day, that could be 800 meters. But if you're flying at dusk, it could be reduced to 400 meters. So you always need to bear that in mind when you are out flying. And another thing to bear in mind with the distance is the wind conditions. So you need to make sure that you've got enough battery power for the drone to come back. So if the drone is flying away from you and it's got a tailwind, that's going to be great. It's going to be using that tailwind to move quicker and get further away. But then when you turn the drone around and try and bring it back to you and it's got a headwind, it's going to struggle more and it may not have enough power if it's too far out to reach you. So always bear in mind the weather conditions as well in relation to how far you fly in the drone out. So a new feature that's been added to the Mini series is the ability to power the drone on and off by unfolding the arms. Now you can toggle this on and off by selecting the options within the controller, but I find that if it's left on, the drone is going to power up more quickly. Also, when you're changing the batteries on the drone, the minute you put a new battery in, the drone is going to power on. So it is going to save you a few seconds when you're actually deploying the drone. So next we're going to move on to camera settings, and the first one you've got is photographs. And for this you've got three options, being JPEG, RAW or JPEG and RAW. Now if you're uploading just to social media such as Instagram or Facebook, then JPEG is fine. If you want all the details captured within the file, then obviously you're going to pick RAW. And if you want both, then you click the JPEG plus RAW. So you've got the option to upload directly to social media straight away, or the ability to enhance the photo in post-production. So with the aspect ratio, you should always have it set to 4:3. And that's because when the drone takes a photograph, it always does it in that aspect ratio. But then if you've got the 16:9, it's just going to crop that image down automatically for you. Whereas if you've got the original 4:3, you've got more verticality within the image that you can crop in and adjust the photograph to exactly the way you want it. And again, with resolution, you need to go for the highest you want. So I would always select the 50 megapixel. Now you have got the option to switch on the overexposure warning and the histogram, but if you're shooting in auto, you don't really need these on because the drone's going to take care of all the settings itself. You only really need to switch these on if you are shooting in the pro mode and you want to get the best dynamic range you can across the image. So next you've got your grid lines, which are going to help you with composition. So you've got your diagonals and your spot if you want to try and center things. We've also got the grid lines to assist you with your rule of thirds. So say for example you're doing an horizon shot, then the sky should be on the top 2/3 of the image with the ground on the bottom third. Or if you're doing more of a landscape shot, then the sky should be on the top third and the landscape on the bottom 2/3. Similarly, if you're doing a person or a building, then it should line up on one of the vertical thirds. So now we're going to move on to the button customization. And this will depend on what controller you're using. So if you've got the RCN3, it's the FN button, and if you've got the RC2, it's the C1 and the C2 buttons on the bottom of the controller. So for me, I like to have the C1 button set for cruise control. So this means that when the drone is flying, I can just press the button once and the drone is going to continue on that trajectory without any input from me, so I know I'm going to get smooth and cinematic footage. Then I've got my C2 button mapped to my exposure lock, so I know that once I press that, the drone is going to lock the exposure and the exposure is not going to change mid-shot as I'm flying the drone. Then the right dial is just set to zoom, so I can zoom in and out as I'm flying. And then finally I got the gimbal rod mapped to pressing and holding the C1 button whilst I rotate the right dial, and to adjust the exposure by pressing and holding the C2 button and turn in the right dial. But obviously you can set these for whatever suits your mode of flying best. So the next set of changes are done directly on the screen of the controller. So for me, I've always got my resolution set to 4K across all my cameras because that's going to give me the highest quality, and I've also got my frame rate set to 24 frames per second because that's going to give me a more cinematic feel. But obviously you set that for whatever's best for you and your filming environment. Another thing to bear in mind is when you're filming in quick shots, just double check that you have got your resolution and frame rate set to what you want, because there have been times where you may be filming in 4K, you've gone into quick shots and it's been reduced down to 1080p. So always double check that you've got the right frame rate and the right resolution. You've also got your photograph options on this page. So again, you can just click on the icons at the bottom and you can change between JPEG, JPEG and RAW, and 12 and 50 megapixels. And also on the top right, you're going to see a little red circular icon, and if you press that, that's going to give you the option to change the obstacle avoidance settings during the flight itself. Okay, so all that remains, if you found it useful, please do the like and subscribe thing. Try and get me over the 1,000 subscribers. That would be great. If there's anything you want to see in relation to the Mini 4 Pro, the Mini 5 Pro, the DJI Neo, or the Hover X1 Pro or Pro Max, also let me know in the comments below, and hopefully you'll check out this next video. Thanks very much. Bye bye.